Hello, this is Daniel from sound.headquarters.inc. In today's video, we are building these rolling floor standing acoustic panels, otherwise known as gobos. We're going to go step by step through the process of framing, insulating, upholstering, and adding the final trim to give you a nice professional looking product that also performs amazing. So to build the frame for the acoustic panel is to use our 3/4 inch plywood here, and we're going to cut it down on our table saw. We're going to do some rip cuts at just over 4.5 inches thick, and that's going to account for us adding 2 layers of 2-inch rigid acoustic insulation, as well as a 1/2 inch of internal bracing on the inside of the panel. So we're going ahead and doing all of our rip cuts at 4.5 inches, and now we can cut these pieces down to the dimension that the client ordered. So this client ordered these gobos to be 2 feet wide by 6 feet tall. So I'm doing 24 inches wide, and then I'm doing 6 feet minus the width of 2 pieces of 3/4 inch ply. That way my final dimension ends up being 2 feet by 6 feet. That is the 16 gauge brad nailer that I'm using to nail this frame together. So I'm doing about 3 or 4 nails per corner, and you can see I'm just using the floor as a guide there to make sure that I'm all nice and lined up on both sides, because these floor standing panels are going to be finished from both sides that you look at it. So we want to make sure that this framing is nice and square and plumb when we nail it all together. Now this is 1/2 inch ply. This is going to make up that internal bracing. So I'm just ripping these down, and then I'm going to cut them to size, and I need to make sure that I cut them. I need to subtract the width of 2 pieces of 3/4 inch ply. That way the braces fit on the inside of the frame. And what I'm doing right there is I'm just marking out with pencil the center of the frame. That way I kind of have a guide for when I shoot my nails. Since that brace is only 1/2 inch wide, I don't really have a lot of wiggle room with the nail gun. I need to really make sure that I hit right on. Otherwise it could split the wood of the brace. And same thing, I did about 3 nails per side on the bracing there, and I'm just going around with the sander, just giving the edges a nice sand. That way when we put our fabric on after, we're not getting stuck on any sharp edges. That is the acoustic insulation. This is Owens Corning 703. That's a rigid acoustic insulation, and this one is 2 inches thick. We're doing 2 layers of it. So we're going to just press fit that insulation. We're going to cut it to size and press fit it into the frame. And you can see there how having those brace pieces give us something to actually push that insulation into as like a hard stop, so that the insulation stays where it needs to. And then I just added some tape right at the seam there, just to make sure that none of the insulation ever bulges out into the fabric. Now that fabric that I just stapled on right there, this is just like a standard black polyester, and this is just going to act as a liner for our final fabric right here. This fabric is Guildford of Maine 701, and this is a professional grade, commercial grade acoustic fabric. It's used by a lot of other panel manufacturers as well, and the color for this one is called Opal. So what I'm doing is the same thing I did with that black fabric. I'm just stapling this on all of the sides, and I'm just making sure that I fold my corners over neat. But when I cut this seam off, it's basically the full perimeter of that acoustic panel frame is going to have visible staples. But that's okay, because after this stage, we're going to make our trim, which is going to cover the whole perimeter of the panel, and it's also going to integrate into the legs, and that's going to cover up all of the staples and give our floor standing panels a really nice professional look. So this is the wood that I'm using to do our trim. It is 1 by 6 by 8, so I'm just cutting it just like a touch wider than what we ripped the 3/4 inch plywood to. So I'm just adding maybe like a 1/16 or like just under an 1/18 of an inch to the width that I ripped my 3/4 inch plywood to. That way there's just like a really small reveal on both sides of the final product. It's just a nice kind of touch for when we actually install the trim afterwards. So now that I have all of my trim ripped to the final width, now I can cut them all to the final size. So the first pieces that I'm cutting is going to be the top piece of trim, and that has to be 2 feet plus the width of 2 of these pieces of trim wood, which is also 3/4 inch on both sides. And then I added just like a 1/16 to account for the width of the fabric that is going to be on the full perimeter of the panel frame. So once I have all of my sizings ready, then I can just go ahead and repeat all these cuts to be exact. And now this piece here, this is a 2x4 piece of pine. And what I'm doing is I'm setting up the stop block, cutting these to 16 inches final width. And then I'm just putting a 45-degree bevel on both sides just for aesthetics. These pieces of wood is what we're going to screw the wheels into, and the panel itself is going to rest on top of these. These are going to make the legs for the floor standing panels. So I'm just going over with the sander, just giving them a very, very gentle sand. And now we're ready for our stain. So this client chose this color from Fabricating, and I'm going to go ahead and apply it. This stain is advertised as a 1-coat finish. So that's what we did. We just did 1 coat, and then we're applying this satin clear coat on top once the stain dried. And this satin clear coat really helped the stain kind of pop, just gave it like a nice kind of finished look. And it better matches some of the gear and other kind of wood finish products that the client has in his studio. So I'm just screwing on the caster wheels right now, and I'm just measuring out to make sure that I screw them into the same location on all sides. And this was a little bit of an awkward kind of maneuvering of the panels. We needed a place where we could screw the legs in. So here is a little close-up shot of how I screwed the legs in there. So I just used 3-inch construction screws, and I made sure I lined everything up to be nice in the middle and screw them into the actual panel frame itself. Now what I'm doing is I am pre-nailing together the external frame of our trimmed, or of our stained trim wood here. And then now we can place that kind of prefabricated perimeter trim onto the existing floor standing panel, and then just nail it in place. And then this is going to cover all of those staple marks and cut fabric edges. And it also gives some more rigidity to the final structure of the rolling panel frames. Now the final piece of hardware that I'm doing there is I'm screwing where the trim, the outer perimeter trim, meets the actual legs. I'm just adding 3 screws on both sides, and that is the final piece of hardware to make sure that they are all nicely secured. And then I just went in afterwards and erased all my pencil marks for my screw guides and that kind of thing. Right now we're just the client and I getting the other panel all done, and there's the finished shot of both of them. So really hope you guys enjoyed watching along as we built these gobos. Here are some nice glamour shots and close-ups. You can see how the bottom of that panel frame just literally rests right on top of the 2 pieces of 2x4 pine that made up our legs. And then here's just a little demonstration of how nice and maneuverable these gobos are. It's nice because they're super easy to move around, but they also stay in place once you let go of them. So thank you so much for watching. This has been Daniel from sound.headquarters.inc. Peace out.